Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide podcast. My name is Mo, and today I will be sitting in the host chair. I am thrilled to introduce a guest who has spent decades helping leaders refine their message, expand their influence, and amplify their authority, Mr. Everett O'Keefe. Everett is an international #1 best-selling author and the founder of Ignite Press, a publishing company that has helped guide hundreds of books and authors. His mission is clear: empower leaders to share their stories while maintaining full control of their intellectual property. If you're a leader with a message and you need to get it out, you're in the right place. Everett, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This is quite an honor, I got to tell you.
Yes, sir. Well, it's great to have you here. Appreciate you making the time. Why don't you start out by giving my audience a little bit about you, your journey? How did you find yourself where you're at today?
Yeah, I was one of these guys that was an English major in college and thought I was going to go teach with it. And then I got sucked into the business world shortly thereafter, which is good because I was able to provide for my family. But I was working in the business world for a number of years when a friend came to me and said, "Hey, you've helped market your own business. Why don't you and I help other businesses market their businesses?" And so we started a small marketing company called the Solution Machine. And the whole idea was, hey, you have a problem, we'll find the solution. We did that for a number of years, focusing on things like text messaging and video marketing and mobile websites and those types of things. And then I was at a conference and had been learning some things about publishing. And I was driving back from the conference and I called my business partner. I said, "Hey, John, let's meet in the conference room tomorrow and let's write a book." He's like, "Write a book?" Like, okay, what are we going to write a book about? I said, "I don't know. Let's figure that out tomorrow." So we sat in the conference room. We decided that what we knew and wanted to expand a little bit was our video marketing. So we just wrote a small book about video marketing. We dictated it at the conference table. And our goal was to write, publish, and launch that book within 30 days. And sure enough, 30 days later to the day,
Wow.
I was looking at our book on Amazon and it was #1 in small business marketing, #1 in entrepreneurship. And we were beating Malcolm Gladwell and John Maxwell and a number of other of my favorite authors. And I was like, dang, this is great. And that's when I realized, hey, maybe we should be doing this for our clients. Like maybe we should
Yeah.
be helping other business owners and executives share their messages in order to expand their mission and also bring in new clients and new opportunities and gain authority. And that was the start. That was the impetus of Ignite Press. The irony being that that first book that we did is actually, I consider a pretty cruddy book right now, but it did everything it needed to do. It brought in our first 5-digit clients. It put us on the map. It gave us authority. And that's when you realize books are these powerful things. So anyway, that's a bit of the business journey.
Everett, can you talk about how publishing a book can help a leader grow their influence beyond their immediate network?
Yeah, I mean, the books are incredibly powerful. I mean, we know this subconsciously and consciously. The most powerful messages ever shared have come through books. Let's talk about the Bible, for example, right? As one great example of that. And that influence of books has not diminished. You and I love spoken word. We love podcasts and video and all of those things. But still, books carry this magical authority. And if a leader can take their beliefs, their philosophies or strategies and place them in a book, they now become the expert. They are a recognized expert and authority on that topic pretty much overnight. Just the fact that they're on the cover of the book, imparts such incredible authority. I like to use the saying, do you want to be the person who read the book or the one who wrote the book?
Yeah.
And most people would rather be the one who wrote the book. Books just carry this incredible authority and they're powerful for a number of other reasons. If you write a book and you put this in the hand of, let's just say, a business prospect, they are going to consume that content in their most vulnerable times. They're reading it perhaps before they go to bed. Perhaps they're reading it on the toilet or on vacation. You're right. But they're reading it when their defenses are down rather than consuming it at a time when they're being barraged with other messages. So, and then you also have the long format, right? Where will you, and through what other method will you be able to communicate directly to your prospects or client's brain for literally hours at a time? It's magical. And for that reason, people continue, even though we have other methods available now, they continue to go to books to share their messages with the world.
How do you help a leader clarify his or her message before it even hits the page?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some magic there. And one of the things that I think a lot of people get freaked out about is they think that their book, especially they think their first book needs to be their opus. It needs to be their masterpiece, their legacy. And it will be part of their legacy, right? Because a book is durable. It's the most durable thing you can create for your business. It's going to outlast you. It's going to probably outlast the business. And so there's a lot of pressure there. But the truth is that an effective book for sharing your mission and your message doesn't have to be long. The sweet spot we like to see is between about 120 and 180 pages. Something that can be read on a cross-country flight. Distilling your information down into that it's easier than trying to write that 300 or 400 page book that some people think that they really need to buy. For us, we like to sit down and talk about target market. What do you really want to accomplish with this book? Is it to bring in new prospects? Is it to expand the reach of your organization? Is it to get you on stages so that you can share your influence from the stage more? What is your real reason for it? For most of our clients, the real reason is not selling books and it is not royalties from books, because their ROI is going to be either the intangible of sharing legacy and wisdom or the tangible of getting new clients and new opportunities that are way more valuable than the royalties from a book sale.
So every leader has a story. And you just mentioned, and I love what you said. I didn't even think about that. People read when they're at their most vulnerable points, whether they're at their in the comfort of their own home, vacation, they're on an airplane, but they've let their guard down. They're trying to consume and get something. So for the writer, what role does vulnerability, storytelling play in building trust with an audience?
Wow. Okay. So this is terrific. It's kind of came to me the other day. I was talking with someone and we were talking about wisdom versus story, and that if you really want to be effective, you need to combine your wisdom with story, whether that's your story or the story of maybe your clients or the people you've worked with or others impacted by that wisdom. And the example I came up with was Proverbs. Like Proverbs is smash full of incredible wisdom, but not story. And so we can read it and, but we can't keep consuming. Like you really kind of have to take it in chunks, right? And Mo, you're a pastor. You totally get this. The most effective parts of the Bible, right, are where Jesus is combining wisdom with story. So it's the parables. And I
Absolutely.
think that's true in our own writing too, that we need to interlace the wisdom that we're sharing with story. One of my books, The Power of the Published, I make sure to go through. In fact, when I first wrote it, I had all this great wisdom. I'm like, oh yeah, I've got this stuff in my brain. I'm going to get this out in this book and people are going to love it. And then I realized, dang, this is boring. I'm like, I need to do something different. So I had to go, I went back and I started going, okay, for each of the points I'm making, is there a story there? And so I was like, oh yeah, let me tell the story about, this client or this friend who experienced this through their book. And that made it much more interesting and palatable. And Mo, you've read some business, you've probably read numerous business parables, like the Templeton series, where, and heck, I've got a couple of them here, like The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino, where that wisdom is all being imparted through story. Well, that was perfected a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah.
And it worked then. It still works now.
I want to go back to what you said. It totally resonated with me. You want your first book to be your opus. And the reality is, it's not going to be. So
Nope.
here's the question. What are some of the biggest mindset hurdles that leaders face when they are considering publishing their work?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people approach that book like it's going to be their only book, and it's not. It's just your first. And many people, in fact, I'm a perfect example, Mo. I bet if you look back at your first couple podcast episodes, you probably cringe a little bit. You
I
know,
do.
yeah, right. You've come so far, right? Since that time, you've come so far. So, one of the strategies that we talk about when it comes to getting your book to market is first, your first book, you probably want to get it rapidly to market. You don't want to wait years to make it happen. You want to get it out there working for you and your brand and sharing your message quickly. Traditional publishing, sadly, can take 18 months to 3 years or more to do that. Our process is usually 3 to 4 months to do that. That's not counting the writing time. But you don't want to take forever to write the book. The rapidly written book gets published. The slowly written book rarely does. It rarely gets completed. The other thing is to talk about minimum viable product, MVP, instead of I need to pack all my wisdom in the book. It's no, how much wisdom do I need to put in the book to move the needle for this person? What's the minimum I can put to have impact in that person's life? And then they can reach out to you and your organization to go deeper. So I know that, you're big on culture and business culture. So what can you do to move the needle in someone's life? And then they can come to you for more later. And that's why that sweet spot of like 120 to 180 pages, which is about 25 to 40,000 words, works really, really well. It ticks off all those boxes.
And generally, for somebody who is starting writing, if somebody were to come to you, hey, Everett, I'm writing my first book. You say it's between 25 and 40,000 words. What kind of time should I put towards this? How many months should it take? How many hours a day, a week? What's your guidance on that?
So this is where the landscape is changing with AI being available as a tool to assist. I'm not to a point yet where I want to encourage people to write a book whole cloth with AI, but it can be such a phenomenal brainstorming tool and help speed things up. Even without AI, if you can set aside an hour or two a week, most people in an hour or two can write 1,000 or 2,000 words. And if you do that 20 times, you've got 20 to 40,000 words. And, when you think of that and like, okay, could I do it in 20 weeks just by setting aside an hour or two a week? And some people will find those chunks in the evening after the kids have gone down. Some will have to carve those chunks out on a Friday morning or whatever. It can be done. And then there's also, accountability there, we can help connect people with a book coach if they want to help really kind of direct and ride shotgun on them if that's what they want and need. So, but in my mind, there's no reason that you can't write the book in a 3 to 6 month period of time. And if you want to do it in 30 days, it can be done that way too. One of the most effective books that people can do for their first book is just write a book around the frequently asked questions of their business. You can write those down. If I gave you 5 minutes, Mo, right, you'd be able to write down 20 questions that people ask you all the time about your business and brand. And then if I said, hey, grab your phone and dictate 5 or 10 minutes the answer to each one of those questions, that can be the foundation for your manuscript. You could have 90% of your manuscript done in a very
Well,
time. So
yeah.
that's a terrific model for a business building book for those people who are interested in it.
You mentioned one of my favorite authors of all time, John Maxwell, earlier on, and he talks about legacy. You've said that books are a part of a leader's legacy. Can you expand on that idea for our listeners?
Yeah, we have a fair number of authors who come to us and they are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they have built a business. They have created success for themselves and their families, and they realize that they have more to pass on, that they want to pass on information to the next generation, whether that's a generation of their family or generally so. My daughters do with our first grandchild. And I think of what's it going to be like when my grandchild is looking on Amazon or whatever the equivalent of Amazon is at that time, you know, and sees, wow, there's grandpa's books, and I will be long gone perhaps, but they'll be able to learn who I am and my beliefs and maybe some of my wisdom from one of the books I've written. Because like we talked about, how it's going to it'll outlast me. It'll outlast any other thing I do in my business. And I think that's one of the things, like, we feel like we have kind of a sacred calling here because what we get to do is help share these messages, other people's messages with the world in a way that is, ultimately timeless. So it's an honor to be able to help people do this.
You've mentioned a little bit about the journey of writing and publishing, but what does the publishing journey look like from the idea to bestseller with Ignite Press?
Yeah, our process works like this. And in the world of publishing, we talked about traditional and how it can take a really long time. And you can imagine, right? 18 months to 3 years is like an eternity in a business cycle, right? Can you imagine creating something and it not working for you for
Right.
3 years from now, right? You'd be like, well, why would I even try? So our process is quite a bit faster. If someone comes to us and they already have a manuscript in hand, we're usually launching that book within 3 to 4 months. And we carry them through copy editing, through interior layout design. Cover, we do through a cover contest. We actually invite artists from around the world to participate in developing the cover. And our clients love this because it means that they get, usually instead of like 2 or 3 variations from an in-house artist, they're going to get probably 100 to 200 variations to choose from. And then we publish leveraging print on demand, which is an author's best friend. It basically means Amazon prints the book only after someone buys it, and they print and ship it, and they do it very affordably. And what this means is that, you know, back in the day, you has to buy like a pallet of books, yeah, as
Yeah.
an author, right, to get them at a reasonable price. So that day is gone. Like, we don't have to do that anymore with print on demand. And what that also means is that next year you go, oh my gosh, I need to update my book. It can be updated, and that process done. So we set the books up for print on demand. That also means that those people who are speaking can get author copies very inexpensively, usually for like $3 or $4 a copy, and have complete freedom as what to do with those, whether they want to sell them at the back of the room, put one on every seat, bundle them in with speaking, etc. Just huge advantages to print on demand. And then we carry them, through an Amazon bestseller launch. And if we do our job correctly, for a period of time, that author will be the #1 best-selling author in their appropriate categories on Amazon. And then that accomplishment follows with the book and with them for the rest of their lives.
In an age of algorithms and virality, how do you coach authors to remain authentic while at the same time building their brand?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, Mo. That is fantastic. I think it's helping them recognize that they do have a unique voice and a unique perspective. It doesn't matter, people will say, right, there's nothing new under the sun. Well, we've seen this year there's some new things under the sun when it comes to AI and stuff,
Right.
but in regards to the philosophy and message, sometimes, I mean, we are all a summation of what we have learned and the people we've met, but it's a unique combination. So when we speak, whether it's with our voice or with our words, we do it in a way that is subtly sometimes and distinctly other times different than other people. And one of the things that we see people struggle with is that whole imposter syndrome. It's that whole thing of, hey, who am I to say this? Who am I to put my opinion out there? Like, other people have said maybe some similar things before. But I fully believe that there are people in the world who are wired to hear a message from you and in the way you say it. And if you don't say it, they're never going to get it. They are never going to hear it. And so when it comes to who am I to say it, I kind of think, who are you not to? Like, who are
Wow.
you to make the decision to withhold it? There's
Yeah.
someone out there that's not going to hear it if you're not saying it. So I think that is part of the journey for authorship, and realizing that their voice is going to be their own authentic voice, unless of course they're writing it all with Chat GPT. But but even Chat GPT can be taught to learn your voice. So there are ways to use that too. And by the way, some of our authors we refer for ghostwriting. If that's the great thing. Anybody who wants to get their message out, there's a method. For
Sure.
some people want to go off in a cabin in the woods for 6 months and write a book. If they want to use this as an excuse to spend that time, that's fine. That's okay. But it's not required. It can be done in so many other different ways, and with book coaches and with ghostwriters and with AI assist. And there's a way. There's always a way. So if someone's listening to this and is wondering what their way is, let's have a talk. We'll find their way.
I'd love to hear about leadership in the publishing industry. What leadership lessons have you learned while leading a team and coaching so many different authors?
I think that one of the lessons I've learned in the process is, like, you just can't be afraid to do it your way. There's the way that other people have done things, but you can't be afraid to do things your way. So, for instance, in the traditional publishing world, an author has to first find an agent, get the appropriate agent. Hopefully, that agent sells them into a contract with a traditional publisher. But then that author is selling their intellectual property to the publisher. And that they're now restricted in how they use that intellectual property because they don't want to run afoul of their contract. We decided to set it up totally differently. We just said, no, let's just do it where the author owns everything. We own nothing. And the author gets their books at cost. They get all the royalties. They have complete creative control and ownership. We send them all their files, everything, which flies completely in the face of what my business coach told me to do. He said, no, 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 Everett, don't do that. You need to be like the electric company, right, to your authors, where they're attached at the hip. And if they want something, they have to go through you and everything like that. And I was just like, yeah, but if I were publishing a book, I wouldn't want it that way. I
Yeah.
would want, I'd want freedom. So for us, it was making this decision to break the mold, to do it where our author owns everything. And that comes with challenges, right? That means we're not getting money on the book sales, where that means we're not getting money when books are printed and all of that. So obviously we have to charge a fee for our service, but it provides a unique avenue for the author because now they have complete ownership. And so we get a lot of clients that come to us. They did traditional publishing on their first book, and then they want to go but they want to go with our method on their next book. And so the lesson for me was that we don't have to do it the way it's always been done. There's another way. And there's great technologies out there now that we all get to take advantage of. Look at this tool we're using right now, right? Using Riverside for the podcasting tool. That didn't exist a few years ago, and it provides you with incredible opportunities. Now we also have incredible opportunities in publishing methods, in print on demand, and all of those. And if we were just stuck with the way things were always done, we'd miss them, totally miss them. By the way, that whole print on demand thing was completely poo-pooed by traditional publishers until 2020 and 2021, when they started running out of paper.
Huh.
And when all the ships were docked off of the California coast because of the supply chain interruptions, all their books were sitting off of out in the ocean. They couldn't bring them in for their book launches, and they discovered, hey, maybe this print on demand thing actually has a use, and they started using. And now they use it. Now they finger it in with traditional printing. So new methods, we should be exploring them. We shouldn't be afraid of them. We should be like embracing them. And I think that was doing that and bringing my team along with new things. It's just been part of that journey.
On your website, there's a lot of success stories. Do you have a favorite story of a leader who published with Ignite Press?
I do. I'll tell you the quick story of Cindy. That's not her real name. Cindy came to us with a manuscript, and she said, hey, I'm going to be attending a medical tourism conference in Dubai in about 2 months. Do you think we could get it set so I could bring my book, like take my manuscript and make it into a book by the time I leave? And I said, yeah, let's make it happen. So We did. She got on the airplane with maybe 10 copies of her book. She flew to Dubai to this conference. She's just attending it. Okay. She, the first day of the conference, she hands out these copies of her book to key people that she wants to establish relationships with. And then that night, she was walking around the lobby and she sees someone reading her book. She's like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. That's great. And then the next day, a different person approached and said, hey, I read your book last night and I want to talk about hiring you. And it ended up, she left that conference with like 3 paying customers and then was invited to participate in a textbook, a college textbook on the topic, which of course now places her with all of the academic experts in her field. And then one of those clients also asked her to come back the following year, and they sponsored her to be a speaker at that same conference in Dubai the following year. So she literally went, from just attending this conference to speaking on the international stage in a really short period of time. And it was because of 2 things. It was, of course, her message, but also the authority of having published a book on the message. And so it was such an overnight change for her. So it's a story that we love to tell, obviously. But
Yeah.
it was great to watch that result for her. And that happened in such a short period of time.
Everett, on my podcast, at the end, I always give Mo's final thoughts. But when I have a guest on, I give them the final words. To a leader out there, young, old, or in between, that says, I'm not ready to write a book, what would you say to them?
It's pretty easy to me. The greatest tragedy in writing is the document that is still on your hard drive, that is, or in these days, I suppose, in the cloud, in your Google Docs. But the truth is that you've got wisdom, and the statistics show that, like I've heard, 90% of people supposedly say they want to write a book someday. I have yet to meet a person that hasn't thought about writing a book. But the greatest tragedy is the wisdom that is just kept bottled up. It needs to be shared. If you're not sharing it, whether that's the spoken word, whether it's videos, whether it's a book, whatever, that's the greatest tragedy. So we're here. There's always a way. There's always a way to get your message out. And one of them is being on a great podcast like yours.
Everett, where can my audience find you?
Yeah, I've got a couple ways. One is if they want to get a copy of The Power of the Published, of course, it's on Amazon, but I set up a link for your podcast so that they can get a digital copy for free. And that's at mypodcastperk.com. And then if they want to talk with me about their book or even just an idea, they can go to our website. That's ignitepress.us. And there's a button there where you can schedule a consultation directly with me.
I love it. And thank you for that free digital download. That's above and beyond. So I appreciate that. Well, Everett, I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate you taking the time. It's important for leaders always to exercise their voice. And this is just another way. So we'll make sure that we put all those links in our show notes. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Sign up for our Rising Tide monthly newsletter. Give you all the good stuff, and it's all free. So again, Everett, thanks for coming on, and I hope to have you on again.
Thank you so much, Mo.